We are beginning the West Linn-Wilsonville School Board regular meeting for November 5th. Ms. Douglas, will you please call the roll?
Chelsea King Martin.
Here.
Betty Reynolds.
Here.
Chair Fitch.
Here.
Regan Molitor.
Here.
Dylan Hides.
Here.
Technology, please.
Hello, good evening, and I want to introduce our speaker this evening. Our regular speaker is not able to attend tonight, so I'd like to introduce Grace Martin. Grace is a sophomore at Art Tech, and this is her first year at Art Tech. Last summer, she worked at the Crest Farm on an internship and was also a counselor at Crest. She is very enamored with animals and all things outdoors, and we're really thrilled that she's here tonight to speak about what's going on at our school. So welcome, Grace.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Grace Martin. I'm glad to be representing Arts and Technology High School, where I am a sophomore. Last week marked the start of quarter 2. At Art Tech, each quarter class is an award credit, so the start of a quarter means a fresh start for everyone. It also means that we welcome new students to our ranks. With new students attending, our enrollment is up to 93 students. We have had a very busy month. Last weekend, 19 students and 4 teachers attended the Phoenix program, which is a retreat led by Synagogue at Camp Collins out on the Sandy River. Activities such as challenge courses, goal settings, and group discussions help students build on their previous successes, gain self-confidence, and plan for their future. The report from students and adults alike was that there are a lot of great learnings occurred. Art Tech has been participating in the Phoenix program for many years, and it continuously comes up as one of the favorite activities for our graduates. Some of the positive results have been better attendance, goal setting for future successes, and increased connections to other students and facility. One part of the program at Art Tech is something which we call crew, but operates like an advisory class. We meet with our crew leaders Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Each certified staff member has a crew of 7 to 8 students that they work with for the year. Each family has a conference with their crew leader mid-October to review their progress and success for this year. On Tuesdays, we have an all-school meeting for students and staff, which we call community meetings. Over the past month, we have had 3 excellent guest speakers that have talked about their lives and how they got to where they were going. We had Emily Stodgrass, a firefighter from Gresham, Nick Spencer, who talked about travel and seeing the world, and Will Lee, one of our own teachers, who talked about his time in the Peace Corps. This week, we are lucky enough to have Laura Flossie scheduled to speak on her time in Africa and elsewhere. If anyone here has an interest in sharing a bit of your journey with us, 15 to 20 minutes tops, feel free to contact Saskia at Art Tech. We also had our first rock concert of the year on October 26th at the Youth Music Project in West Linn. It has well attended the crowd, and the crowd definitely loves it. We have one rock concert at the end of each quarter. Mark your calendars because we would like to invite all of you to the next one that will be on January 25th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
West Linn High School.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Hayter, and I am the ASB president at West Linn High School, and it's wonderful to see all of you again. October 19th was our homecoming celebration. We welcomed back our alumni and celebrated our school spirit and Lion pride. The whole community and West Linn students of all ages were invited to our new and improved homecoming carnival. Our homecoming king and queen were crowned at halftime, and even though we lost the game, the dance afterwards was still a lot of fun. It was a very successful celebration. The week of October 22nd was Teen Driver Safety Week. We hung posters around the school with facts about the dangers of distracted driving and showed a video about it on our weekly Live Roar broadcast too. Additionally, we had a pledge wall for students to sign and handed out blue ribbons symbolizing students' pledges. Our Leadership ASB is doing work this year that focuses on acknowledging and supporting our student body's struggles with mental health. It's an issue at Westland High School that is starting to cause students, staff, and parents a lot of concern. We helped develop a lesson on stress management that was taught to all our students in our October academic seminar classes, and we are planning what our next steps will be in helping our students to feel more supported and safe. I have a stress line for each of you. So we made those, and we're giving those out to students for free, just to kind of help support them. It's cute, but it's also a tool to help remind our students that we care and to relieve their stress for a little. Our annual canned food drive starts this Wednesday, kicking off with the boys' Powder Tough volleyball tournament that evening. The drive will conclude on November 15th. We are eager to help out our community and love working with the Oregon City Elks and the Westland Food Pantry. Our musical, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, opens this Thursday night and will run through November 17th. There will also be a middle school matinee on November 14th. It is the hilarious, touching, and realistic story of 6 middle school kids competing at the county spelling bee, and will feature the spelling talents of audience members too. Email Miss Kaiser if you would like to attend, and she will set up tickets for you. On November 13th, we will be hosting the TRL Jazz Band competition again this year, and our amazing band will be playing at 2:30 if you want to drop by. So November 13th at 2:30. Fall sports are concluding their very successful seasons. Boys soccer ended in the state quarterfinals. Unified soccer played in a big tournament last weekend, and the girls soccer state semifinal game is Wednesday. Cross country sent 14 runners to state last weekend, and volleyball placed 3rd in state this year. Football will be playing their second round playoff game this Friday against Lake Ridge at home. We're really proud of all of our student athletes. We are already preparing for our annual Mr. Ms. Westland competition, which will happen the week after Thanksgiving, and are starting plans for the 10 Days of Joy surprises that our Leadership ASB class creates for our student body every year in December. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next month.
And thank you for repeating and speaking slowly on those dates because I was writing them down. Come on up, Wilsonville.
Nice to see you all again. My name is Mark Herrera. And so Legally Blonde is our play, and I would recommend for you guys to all see it. We have 3 more shows this week, and so far it's been a great turnout. We've had a lot of great reviews. We also had an amazing turnout for the Day of the Dead last week. I know I saw a couple of you guys there. And the band and choir are getting ready for a busy November and December. In athletics, girls cross country finished 2nd in state on Saturday. We've won 5 league titles and a 2nd place. And then next Monday, all of our winter sports will have their first practice. We host a quarterfinal football game on this Friday against the Crater Comets. You guys are more than welcome to join. Also on Saturday, we had a unified tournament that we hosted, and we won 3rd place in the A bracket. Students and teachers are working hard to make the most of our limited days since November and December are kind of short on school days, sadly. November 2nd was the deadline for early admission for colleges. We will have more deadlines that are going to start coming in. And then in activities, we have a game night on Friday from 3:30 to 5:30, and our next school assembly is in December. Thank you all. Have a great evening. See you all next month.
Dr. Reynolds?
So we're reporting on our school visits. And as background, I wanted to mention that I noted in Dr. Ludwig's through line presented in September 10th, when she first talked about the school visits, she identified the board's responsibilities as goals and policies. And so because the pertinent goal in this case is to grow student achievement and close the achievement gap, I asked to meet with principals after the student achievement data became availability. Dr. Ludwig agreed. And so the first one of the three for me was completed last Friday after that data was available. So I visited Trillium Creek Primary with Principal Jim Mangan, Instructional Coordinator Kate Donegan, and Assistant Superintendent David Pryor. Mr. Mangan described the leadership cycle in a nutshell as improving education opportunities and outcomes through data analysis cycles for reading, writing, and math. He also described his equity stance, which is to close the existing learning gaps and student outcomes, and grounded in the belief that all students can learn, and accomplished by providing all students access to challenging curriculum, monitoring student progress, and making accommodations and adjustments as indicated by those outcomes. And his commitment to equity was just very evident throughout the entire visit. So a structure for accomplishing this is through grade-level professional learning teams, feeding into an overlying structure of 4 teams: equity, climate and culture, math, English language arts, and a steering committee. So the professional leading teams meet and feed into those 4 structural teams. So a highlight of the visit was a student panel of 5th graders. They provided their thoughts regarding the district's mission question of creating learning communities and thoughtful people. And their reflections were very refreshing. They showed an appreciation for teacher feedback, strategies for analytical thinking, and they also showed knowledge of evaluating resources. And then regarding thought leaders for the world, they showed a remarkable capacity for and understanding of empathy, inclusion, respect, and kindness. So they were just absolutely a great testimonial to the work that Mr. Mangan and the entire staff of educators and staff is doing at Trillium Creek. We also discussed the school report card. We noted an outstanding increase in math scores by 10% from last year. Mr. Mangan attributed it to a focus in math for that year, and again, testimony to the success of those professional learning teams and the feedback cycle. He also reiterated a commitment to equity, and he noted room for improvement in other areas, particularly in the areas of the disaggregated subgroups. We talked about alignment of their cycles with the district goals and outcomes and with state results. And he did indicate that state data, as well as their own interim tools, informs them. And he also communicates with Dr. Pryor on the successful strategies and outcomes, like his outstanding results in math. So I just wanted to close by noting again the board's responsibility for the goal of closing the achievement gap, and that longitudinal data is now available on both the district report cards, at least 3 years, and data beyond that is available. And so it's my hope that the board can review the data on the new report cards, or use the very powerful Forecast 5 analytics tool in our decision making, which aggregates that data for us and virtually any other set of variables that we choose.
Ms. Molitor?
All right. My approach to these learning walks is a little bit different than Betty's. I had volunteered to visit 4 schools, but as luck would have it, I had the chance to visit 5. So I visited Beckman Creek Primary, Lowry Primary, Bolton Primary, Rosemont Ridge Middle School, and the Three Rivers Charter School. With regards to Three Rivers, I actually will talk about it separately, and I have some additional information just to provide this board with regards to the charter renewal process for Three Rivers. I was warmly welcomed and greeted at each and every school, and I was asked, is there something in particular you want to know? And the reality is I didn't walk into a single school with an agenda. I was really there to learn from our school leaders and just have them show their schools to me, show their cycles of inquiry, their leadership moves, and for me to have the opportunity just to learn why and how they thought that those moves will make a difference in the academic achievement of our students. And I definitely learned a lot. Just keeping in line with kind of your guidelines that you suggested. At both Beckman and Lowry, and it's interesting to have all of our wonderful principals here at the back of the room, but now I'm being accountable. I'm really hoping that what I heard was what you said, so we'll see. So at Beckman and Lowry, each had more than one cycle of inquiry that they wanted to invest in over the course of their school year. One that they had in common was both looking into a cycle of inquiry around writing to deepen students' understanding in writing, and each school was working to develop stronger writers with increased stamina. Lowry, I believe, was undertaking that cycle of inquiry currently, whereas Beckman was going to have that be as a subsequent cycle of inquiry. Bolton was focusing a cycle around further developing their professional learning communities in an effort to further develop their instructional practices with the intent that it would deepen student learning and self-efficacy. And then Rosemont had a cycle that was focused on instruction and assessment with an eye towards ensuring alignment between learning targets and state standards. One through line in a cycle of inquiry that was currently being engaged in by all schools that I visited was around restorative practices, and/or community and culture in relation to social emotional success. And I have to say that this was an area where I personally did a lot of learning, and this process really helped me understand the value in restorative practices. And I know, Chelsea, you have, over the course of being a board member with me, often expressed your valuing of restorative practices. And it wasn't that I didn't value it, I just don't think I fully understood it. And this was a great learning opportunity for me to finally understand. So this is my understanding. This is where hopefully I heard it correctly. This experience allowed me to understand the academic value of this practice. I've come to understand that restorative practices encompass community building. We want our students to feel a part of their school and classroom community, to feel comfortable speaking around their peers, sharing their thoughts, ideas, and needs in a safe and welcoming environment. This practice often includes students gathering in a literal circle to add structure, then sharing with each other to build a sense of community within their circle. So how does feeling part of a classroom community and feeling comfortable with sharing with that community relate to learning? And what I learned was that if a student feels like they're part of a community where their input is valued and they feel supported in sharing their thinking, they are more likely to show up to class every day, to meaningfully participate in the learning targets for the day, and to collaborate or wrestle with problem solving with their peers. If a student does not feel a part of the community, they are not likely to want to join in group discussions, group problem solving, or share their thinking aloud to their class. If a student's not participating in these activities, it will adversely impact their academic achievement. So that for me was a huge linking all those pieces together to understand the parts and the impact. So That was my huge takeaway. The work around restorative practices would be a direct response to board goals number 1 and 2, in my opinion. It is a practice that emphasizes inclusive practices, accountability, increases confidence, encourages equitable outcomes, and it would raise rigor for all students. When visiting the primary schools, I saw work around restorative practices taking place. I saw some work around conflict resolution and the desire of a student to be included and let back into the classroom community. I saw students actively sitting in circles and being encouraged to share on a topic of conversation where they felt comfortable doing so. At the middle school level, this would be at Rosemont, I was able to engage in a roundtable discussion with students who reflected on the use of circles in their classrooms for sharing. The students each wanted the opportunity to engage in this type of sharing more often. They felt that they weren't getting as many opportunities to do so as they would like. And they wanted to implement, and this I thought was interesting, they'd like to implement controls that prevented their peers from being able to pass on sharing. Because the idea is that if you don't feel comfortable speaking, you're not ever being forced to do so. But they were a little concerned that maybe their middle school aged peers were passing because they were too comfortable passing. It was the easy thing to do, and that they would love to hear more from their students and have them participate. And so they would like to maybe limit your opportunity to pass. I overall, when we decided to kind of embark on this, going directly into the schools and having learning experiences, I was happy to do it, but I was a little saddened because I, as a board member, have thoroughly enjoyed, to me, some of the most valuable board sessions I've had are the 2 trial by fire, where we get to hear everything from each and every school. However, after having partaken in this experience, I would gladly do this again. Overall, I appreciated the opportunity to have conversations with the principals. That smaller group setting also, and having additional time, allowed me to ask questions that I may have chosen for time purposes to have maybe not asked. And I appreciated to actually see learning in action in the classrooms, to see students engaging in the work. It was fun to be able to walk in those classrooms and identify some of the leadership moves around cycles of inquiry. And it was great to talk with the students. I was given an excellent explanation of the life cycle of a salmon in a 3rd grade classroom at Bolton. And I feel overall this method provided a greater opportunity for quality of information and interaction, whereas the other method provided a greater quantity of information. I would welcome, again, like I said, the opportunity to do this again next year.
Give your report on
Yes.
Three Rivers.
Oh my gosh, thank you for not letting me forget that again. So with regards to Three Rivers, I also, with Dr. Ludwig, Nick Chapin, the principal, invited us in to come visit the school. We had the opportunity to actually wander and see students at work. They happened to be engaging in I think the term, more of a steampunk, but it was a STEM activity where they were linking their science to also a time period that they were studying with their literature. It was just a neat, interactive, hands-on activity for the students. So that was some of the learning I got to do while I was actually in their building. However, it is a charter renewal year. Under our contract, I believe it comes up for renewal every 4 or 5 years, and at the moment, I can't remember exactly which, but nonetheless, it's perfunctory. It's a process. And so we had asked Mr. Chapin just to send us kind of his proposed outline of how that process would go this year. It is described within the charter agreement. And so roughly in January, this board will end up receiving a letter from Three Rivers stating its intent to renew its charter. The board then typically, so then we will, Three Rivers will have a negotiation team that it sends or works with, and this our board's designated negotiation individual is Dr. Ludwig. So she will be responsible for, should there be any requests or changes or just comments or anything about the existing charter, those will go through Dr. Ludwig, and then I, as board liaison, will be present, sitting and observing that process. And then in March, and I might be, anyways, I'm sorry, that Three Rivers will meet and discuss what it wants to do. Then in March, it will essentially come to the board, and the board will vote on whether or not it's going to renew the charter. The terms of that, though, isn't necessarily discussed during that time. Then in the month of April, May, we will discuss the terms, if there is any changes in terms. Then that will be brought to the board for final approval and decision. So by June, that process should be wrapped up, and it may not even take that long. Who knows? So that's something to look forward to.
Director King-Martin?
Hello. I don't know that this has been said, but for anybody who's in the audience or watching at home, typically in the fall we have had a much more formal setting where all of the board members and the principals sit around a table and hear from all the principals reports on what happens in their schools. And this year we took a different approach, and we all divvied up the schools and toured them. I'm not sure if that was clarified for anybody who's watching here, but I had the honor of, let me push that away, I think I'm really loud. I had the honor of visiting Sunset Primary, Willamette Primary, and Wood Middle School. And I'm completely sincere when I say it was an honor. I was really impressed by our schools, and I share the sentiment that it was really special to be in there and to be on the ground, so to speak, and amongst the learning and in the classrooms. So we were given a framework by which we were encouraged to report back on this process, which included sharing about cycles of inquiry, themes that we observed, something we learned, a way that this experience helped us link the work that you all are doing in your schools, you all being the principals who are here, to the district goals, and feedback about the process. So I'll follow that approach. There was a very clear theme across all the schools, and that was learning targets. So in every school I went to, I was shown learning targets and how teachers are using learning targets in their classrooms. So I think every, if not almost every classroom I went into, a learning target was clearly posted on the wall somewhere, or on a big piece of paper, but there was a posting of the learning target, and it was very clear what the students were supposed to be learning. And it was really fun also to be encouraged to interact with the students, and so we weren't told, we didn't stay distant, but we got down on the students' level and asked, what are you supposed to be learning? How will you know if you've learned it? And why is it important for you to know this? And it was very clear, very evident that our students are used to this process, that they were able to answer these questions. And I'll offer just some examples, because I think sometimes a little story or an example brings this to life. So there was a classroom I went into where a primary student was working on writing a letter, and I asked him what the learning target was, and he stated he was learning how to structure, correctly structure and write a letter. And when I asked him why he needed to know that, he let me know he would be writing letters in his personal life and in his professional life, and so this would be important. And I asked him how he would know if he was doing it correctly, and I think this was a fourth grader, and he told me, well, because there's a model of how to do it up on the wall, and I can look at my work and I can check it on this model. So that was very good. There was another child, I think it was a second grader, they were working on math. And this child, I asked why was it, or what were they learning? They were learning, I think, subtraction. And why was it important? Well, because I'm going to go to third grade and I'm going to need to know how to do this. And so there was even this sense of, I need to know how to do this to be successful in school, all the way to I need to know how to do this to, operate in the world out there. So that was just neat to have that ongoing discussion. I imagine all of you probably experienced something like that. Let's see, the other theme I observed was active classrooms. So there were not very many classrooms, if any, where I walked in and the students were just sitting individually, quietly doing a worksheet. I did not observe classrooms like that. What I observed was very active classrooms with a lot of interaction and stimulation occurring. So for example, in one classroom, this was again a primary school, they were listening to a podcast with the instructor moving about the classroom, and they were looking at their piece of paper and listening to the podcast and identifying science words. So they were really learning science and literacy at the same time, talking about the words that they were learning. And then I even observed the teacher occasionally saying, yes, remember that this material, I was learning alongside of them what these things were. This was like what we observed when we turned over the wood on our nature walk. And so the teacher was linking it back to a field trip that they had talked. So there was a lot of classrooms where there was just many layers of teaching and learning occurring at the same time. So the active classroom, students interacting with each other and with the teacher. One classroom at Wood, the science teacher had created a game with the periodic table of elements, and the students were rolling die and moving their figures around and interacting with the table of elements in that way. So very active classrooms. And yeah, so I would say those were themes, learning targets, active classrooms, and then the third theme that I observed was this idea of shared leadership. I saw that in all of the schools, where it's the principal is working very closely with the teachers to kind of tap into the expertise that's in the school and help design what they're doing in their professional learning communities. And you know, I heard about schools that were during their meetings really breaking off into teams and just using that expertise. So they might be reading a book together and talking about it, or looking at data together and talking about it, or even observing one another's classrooms. And so the whole notion of shared leadership was very strong. Let's see, I could keep going on and on, but I'm going to stop there with the themes. I will say a couple other things about what I learned. Definitely interacting with the students was a highlight. Got to do that at every school. And at Wood, in fact, we sat in a room with the middle schoolers and interacted with them. One of the things I think that one of the ways this deepened my understanding is that we talk a lot about how important it is that our students are known and seen, that some adult, at least one, but preferably more than one in our schools, knows our students. And what I saw was intentional moves that our administrators are making to know each student, and also to see that connection when I talk to the students and to hear them talk about their sense of being known and that they had adults that they connected with. So that was a neat deepening of my understanding of that. I'll just say one more thing and then I'll stop. I could go on and on about this for a really long time. This is a really cool process. Yes, I like this process. I preferred this to what we have done in the past. I did much prefer the deeper connection and seeing the teachers in the classroom and getting to know the principals and the assistant superintendents in a much deeper way. That was really valuable. I would love to do this again. I would love to do more of these. It really just brought to life what we do here sitting around this table. So I appreciated that greatly. The one feedback I have for our leadership would be that these questions were really great. I would have, and I know I already told this to our chair, but I would have loved to have seen these prior to going in to the walkthroughs, because it would have helped guide my observations and prepared me to speak to this. Thank you for listening for so long.
Director Hides.
So I had the opportunity to visit Stafford Primary, Boones Ferry Primary, and Arts and Tech High School. I'll start with Stafford. I was greeted by Principal Sarah McCarney and Meg Leonard, and Dr. Pryor was there. And this is the first thing that, within the first couple minutes, what you learn about Ms. McCarney and her team is that there's really a fire under them to come up with the best ideas and incorporate the latest research, and they're really proud of what they're doing, and they should be proud because they're doing great work. One of the things that they focused on in our discussion was on collaborative-based teaching, and they said they recognized this was what the research has shown us, what we've learned in these meetings, perhaps the greatest way to move the dial. So they said, what can we do to build a better culture of collaborative learning? It's something really important, but it's also something that's really easy to do badly. And so they said, rather than just jumping into it, let's build a strong foundation for how we're going to do this. So they started off by looking at other schools outside the district that really have a strong collaborative-based teaching program, looked at that. They recognize that there is institutional and personal inertia in not moving there for some people. And so they said, let's bring the teachers in, not only to extract from them the greatest ideas, because we don't have all the ideas. Let's see all the ideas that are out there, but also making sure that the staff didn't feel like this was a top-down mandate, but really something a bottom-up approach. And so they put together a really strong process, and now their next goal is to figure out how do we keep this going. We're at a really good place right now. They've recently done a staff equity audit through a 95-question exam that they gave to their teachers, and they're still talking about the next steps on how to use that. But what they said, if nothing else, these 95 questions really help show the teachers just how broad, when we say equity, how broad that is. It touches a lot of different things. And then one of the highlights of visiting Stafford was visiting the classroom of John Schechter, who I guess everyone already knows is kind of a rock star in that school and in the district. He had circle time in the classroom where all the kids are on the floor sitting in a circle of 24, 25 kids, and they were talking about an incident of bullying that had happened. And every child had the opportunity to talk about what was going on, and the teacher only would speak when needing to refocus the group. And I was in there for maybe 15 minutes, and the entire time the students were leading the conversation. Every student who didn't want to speak could pass, but I noted that every student did speak at some point. There was one girl in there that touched me more than any other. The question that was asked to them is, how do you feel about this? And all of them had pretty similar responses. It's not right. You know, I wish that hadn't happened. And one girl said, I wish I had been there. And that was so powerful to hear her say that. And then hear the rest of the students hear that. And what we talked about, what Meg and Sarah and Dave and I talked about, is that this is going to what kind of Reagan talked about, which is that, you know, for kids to learn, they've got to feel safe and physically safe, emotionally safe. And when we have conversations like this, kids are going to thrive. And what I saw is 25 kids who were, at least in that moment, thriving. So that was really exciting. I went to Boone's Ferry, saw Miss Freeman and her team, and we talked a long time before we went in the classrooms about their heavy emphasis on inclusive practices and access to opportunity. And it was clear from talking to Ms. Freeman that she has built in that school a culture of high expectations of her staff. Like, it is clear that, you know, we're here, I want us to be here next year, and you're here after that. And it was inspiring to see somebody who recognized that her staff was amazing and said, I want you to be as amazing as you are, and working towards that. This visit was about focusing on about student engagement, so quality of questioning and student talk, which is another dial mover that we've talked about. We went into the 4th grade classroom of Karen Christensen, and I tell you, I love seeing people who are experts at what they do. I love seeing it, whether it's a teacher or a plumber or whatever. Miss Christensen was in there with her student teacher, and it was like I was watching a play. Everything was just so sharp and crisp and transitioned, and it was a math discussion where they seamlessly would go from her asking them students to them asking hers, and then they would go together in their group of 4 or 5 students and talk about the subject with each other. And as I walked around, then what I saw is every student was engaged. There wasn't a single student who wasn't paying attention, who wasn't active in the conversation. And again, it wasn't just a culture of high expectations for teachers, but also for students as well. And then we went into the 2nd grade classroom with Miss Douglas, and another fantastic classroom, super high energy, and just kind of this feeling when you walk in of real warmth. This is a teacher who really cared for the kids. And they were talking about what a protagonist was, how do you identify the protagonist. And even with 2nd graders, you saw that same kind of communication where she'd ask questions, a bunch of them raise their hand for verbal answers or hands in the air. Then they would ask questions and they'd talk to each other about questions. And that type of high level activity only works where you've got really great classroom management, and she absolutely had that with second graders. And you could tell that this wasn't just like a one-time thing. In both classrooms I went to, the kids, even by the middle of October, were so comfortable doing those things that it was clear those patterns had been set really early on. So that was really neat to see. And so just kind of the pattern I saw at Boones Ferry is that student engagement is clearly emphasized, and I saw it in the classroom, and it's a dial mover, so it was really exciting to see. And then lastly, I was at Arts and Tech High School, actually twice. I got to visit them in the last several weeks. One visit was on learning targets, and Ms. Dressler and I and her team got to go to every classroom. Every classroom saw very clearly posted learning targets for the students to see. 5 out of 5 in the classrooms I was in. We had the idea, we also talked about the importance of getting kids involved. A lot of the kids going to Arts and Tech High School had kind of up to that point had received more of a passive education, who had fallen in these habits of not really being active in class, whereas in Arts and Tech High School, smaller class sizes, greater teacher-to-student contact, there was a much greater emphasis placed on you got to be an active learner and an independent learner, not a dependent learner. Got to sit down with Dr. Downs and Ms. Dressler, got kind of a history of Arts and Tech High School, how it got to be here, its current student body makeup. And then Arts and Tech High School has the benefit of every Wednesday afternoon they have the early release, so that every Wednesday, unlike the other secondary schools, they get to have that collaborative time, which they emphasize on maximizing the utility of that as well. And then I ended Arts and Tech High School with the opportunity to sit down with kind of it was a student focus group, where they got to kind of tell me what they thought about their experience, and some of them were very, very powerful. Some of the things I heard from the students was that they felt confident that they were going to have if they didn't already, they were going to have a plan at graduation of what they were going to do next. They felt that at Art and Tech High School, they had ways of expressing their creativity that they didn't have in their other schools. They felt connected to their schools in ways they never felt before, not only to their teachers, but also to a peer group that they didn't always have. And they felt like they could access their teachers. Where in their other schools, they felt like they were kind of being lost in the shuffle. Arts and Tech High School, they felt connected. And so all 3 schools, really positive experiences, really great to see teachers in action. And I would highly recommend we do this again rather than the rapid fire principals talking to us. So thank you. And thank you to the 3 principals and their staffs for making me feel very welcome.
So I would just start off with saying this was a process I think was invaluable, and I'm hearing that among the board, and it was valuable because I think that the connections for me were broader. I had the same structure at all 3 of the schools I went to. I sat down with the principal and the principal's team and received information about what the school is working on. I also had an opportunity at all 3 schools to sit down with a group of students and hear what they wanted to say, ask them questions, they could ask me questions, and then had opportunities to go into multiple classrooms at all 3 schools. I think what I'm hearing is I am so proud of this board. I'm so proud of your engagement at your schools and what you've brought back. And it's almost overwhelming for me to hear the level of your excitement of going to the schools. And so we're going to do it again. Yeah, I mean, we're looking forward to hearing what the principals thought, but from our end, it was great. So I got lots of information at all of the schools. I tried to take notes. And again, in terms of process, one of the questions I was asking myself or asking out loud is, okay, for you to do the work that you want to do, what resources do you need from the board? And I was asking that question not just of the principal and the principal's team, but asking that of students as well. And no one failed to provide that information to me. So I'm going to try to touch on some of that as I go through, because a lot of what you touched on are similar to my experiences. I'm going to start with Meridian Creek, where I met with Dr. Olson as a principal. And their focus area is emerging bilingual students and increasing their access to curriculum and decreasing opportunity gaps. Again, right in line with board goal number 1. They're using more staff time to collaborate. They're having grade level meetings every Tuesday. And they're using their half days and protecting those for content discussions. They're co-teaching, they're co-planning. They're using feedback on the professional learning committees. The resources they're using are incredible. The English language learning instructor is there full time, and that's impacting them in really positive ways. They're using workshops here at the district offices, which are outside of the school days. They're using early release days. They're using resources to refresh their learning for emerging bilingual students. They're doing staff meeting times, just using all sorts of opportunities. And just to, again, connect that to what we do as a board, you know, we're providing those resources. We're thinking about it in our budget. We're supporting the efforts by Dr. Ludwig and her staff to provide those opportunities here. So I just heard keep up the good work of what we're providing for those opportunities to allow this to happen. And I think one of the other things I highlighted was this belief that the practices for some will help all. And so I want to go to an example. We went to a classroom, and again, every school I went to, the students were very familiar with people coming in and asking them, what are you learning? Why are you learning it? You know, and how do you know that you've learned what you're supposed to learn? No question that students are used to that our principals and their team is going into the classrooms, and Dr. Pryor and Dr. Downs are very familiar with those students and with those teachers and the principals. So this is just part of what we do as a school district. And again, that was affirming for me. And in one of the classrooms, the conversation afterwards was, well, I couldn't identify which students were emerging language learners, but this is how the teacher interacted with the students to continue to draw out questions and the next level. And so that work was being done as we were in the classroom. I would note, in terms of my conversation with the students at Meridian Creek, they were asking for more after-school resources and more before-school resources. What do you want? And those were the kinds of things that were bubbling up, and that was exciting to hear that part of they want that is more. And again, that's in connection with some of the work being done with Dr. Ludwig and the other superintendents in our county to provide middle school students opportunities after school. Cedar Oak Park Primary School, Principal Miller and her staff are working on a number of things. But again, part of it was writing, connecting it with the district work plan that all students will improve their writing by 1 or more years as measured by pre and post assessments from the units of study. Professional learning is their vehicle to get that done. And one of the highlights of that I want to just explain is they're using exit tickets for each time that their teachers are in professional learning, so they know what their teachers are getting out of those. That connects with part of the questions in the TEL surveys, and they're also doing a separate teacher study, which also informs the work that they're doing there. Both tools that they're using to grow student achievement and to make sure that their professional growth and assessment is aligned with that. That's both goal 1 and 2. There's just a lot of things are going on there too, but that was a highlight. And one of the things that I observed in one of the classrooms was they were sitting in a circle and they were talking about something that was personal experience, relating it to their learning from perspective for literacy. But again, that these students were willing to speak up about some personal experience they had among their peers, and to feel comfortable in doing that, and to not pull back from that experience. And then for Principal Miller to point out that that would not have happened with some of those children even the year prior, and so just the own growth that they're observing. And the students there at Cedar Oak certainly reflect the kinds of values that we would want. As they met with me, you know, what makes their school special were all the kinds of things we would have wanted to hear. I also met with Principal Newman and his staff at West Linn High School, and would note that Principal Newman does not seem new to his staff, nor to the students, nor to the facility, very comfortably fit in and provided leadership throughout the time I was there. What they're working on is focusing on the dimension of purpose through the lens of equity in each classroom. Again, the use of learning targets, but communicating it in multiple ways, both visually and verbally. And I saw examples of that where they were using, I'm not going to perhaps use the right word, but student-teacher helpers in the classroom. And I saw kids sitting at each table, and they were trying to the goal was to ask each other second level questions. And I couldn't tell that there were any language learners in there, any kinds of barriers to communication. So every table I saw, everybody was talking, everybody was asking questions, and they seemed really comfortable in that, the kinds of things that they were wanting to promote. Again, similar things in terms of resources, the continued alignment and time to collaborate. And what I observed at West Linn High School was the ability of staff to be creative in how they were looking forward to that collaborative time and how they were using their collaboration. There was a lot of ownership, it sounded like, and flexibility, and some shared leadership in their professional learning communities. In terms of resources, I think one of the resources we have as a board is to continue to recognize student work and activities beyond academics, and to take the time to recognize students who are achieving in different areas. I would encourage us to celebrate dual credit participation. So let's move beyond AP and some other things and recognize some of the work that is going on that also is advancing our students to have the kind of outcome that we would want for them as they move out of high school, again, related to Goal 1. Profound conversation I felt with the student leaders who came to speak with me there. They identified some of the same things that we heard from our student who was on our board safety advisory committee, and that there is stress and students need to learn a culture of balance in the high schools because we offer so many opportunities and involvement. How do we help our students balance intensity and involvement in those things? And then again, the student leaders encouraging us to be thinking about breaking down perceived barriers to entry into the advanced classes and those extracurricular activities. It was very pleasing to see that these leaders were thinking about all students